is The Shaman's Notebook. Today, my guest is Laura Kasl, who is an astrologer, a marketing business coach, and an astrology business strategist. Welcome.
Thank you, Suzanne. I love talking to you. I'm so happy to be here.
I want to ask you to begin to talk about something that isn't usually the subject of discussion in spiritual circles, which is marketing. Everyone in business needs marketing, yet most people don't know how to do it effectively. As a marketing coach and a business strategist, what would you say is missing? What do people need to understand about marketing that perhaps they don't?
Ooh, that's such a good question. Well, the first thing you always have to remind yourself is selling is a service. So I think we think of, selling and marketing and talking about our services as, kind of selfish. And for spiritual people, especially, that doesn't feel good or aligned. So what I also find though, part of why they don't feel aligned with it and it feels kind of even gross to them sometimes is the methods and strategies they're being taught aren't once again aligned with them, and maybe they are a little sleazy or not something that feels right. So that's why I started bringing astrology into it, because I think different personalities and different types of people will mesh better with certain funnels. So I think something that is I'm sorry something that people misinterpret is that we all have to do this exact scientific formula to have a strong marketing strategy, but that's just not true. And I think it's really important to listen to your intuition and listen to what really feels right to you, and that's what'll bring you success versus trying to do something that just doesn't feel right.
You use the term alignment, and that's a buzzword that we hear a lot, being in or out of alignment. Since you work with spiritual entrepreneurs, how do you help them to understand what is or is not in alignment for them?
That is where the birth chart analysis starts everything. um, so that is really something that most people in our culture in America, North America, most people know their sun sign, and that's just the tip of the iceberg. You might feel it might feel very accurate what your sun sign is, because that is technically the truest form of yourself, but there's so much more going on in a chart, and it's so important to look at everything as a whole. So what I actually do, rather than getting too complex, I get complex with the individual, but I've actually broken it down into the elements. So astrology is every sign is represented by an element. So fire, air, water, and earth. And when you look at your chart, you can actually determine what your dominant element is and what your missing element is. So, whatever your dominant element is will tell you what platforms to show up on and what your marketing funnel should be so that you don't feel exhausted or overwhelmed. So, a great example, I always give this example. If you're a fiery person, you're going to love being on video and reels, and you'll have a lot of energy. But if you're asking a watery person to go live every day and go on reels, it's going to exhaust them. So it's really important to consider who the person is and giving them a strategy that is authentic and honestly even sustainable. Because if it's not sustainable, it's just not going to work for anyone. And I think that's where a lot of entrepreneurs either give up or crash and burn. And then the other element of that is, well, I keep saying element, but the missing element is actually who you want to work with. So if you have a lot of fire, earth, and some air, but you don't have a lot of water, you want your messaging to attract watery people, because those are the people you can help the most, because they're lacking what you have, and vice versa. So because what was happening to me is, as far as compatibility goes, you will usually attract your same element. So as far as like romantic partnerships, even friendships, and people that you're working with, usually it's better to be the same element. But when you're actually doing a service that's trying to heal someone or help someone, you want to be complete opposites because you're their missing piece. So what happens is you want to show up on the platforms that feel good to you, but then message to the element that you can help the most.
So how did you come up with this?
Honestly, it's so funny. I was in a mastermind and I genuinely believe whether or not you're even working with a good coach, the second you choose, and she was great though, but the second you choose to invest in yourself and really be like, I'm ready to take it to that next level. My mind was already, buzzing when I was in this mastermind. And then she was such a Leo. I mean, she must have been all fire, this girl. She had red hair, literally. And she was talking about this thing that she loved, like a podcast or something. And the reasons she loved it, and I'm sitting there, my little Virgo self, like, oh, that's funny. She really probably likes that because she's a Leo. And then from there, it became this almost obsession. It was really like a download. I'm actually lacking water, so I wouldn't call myself the most intuitive person, but that I felt like I channeled this whole experience, and it just, the way it floods through me and it came to me was just, yeah, it almost was an out of body experience. So.
So it's really interesting, this idea that who you are astrologically speaking helps to determine your marketing strategy, the particular, for example, social media that you would use, and then also who you would attract. How do you figure this out?
I mean, it's because of all of my years studying astrology that I recognize certain traits. And I'm one of those people. I somehow always get this, the sign and the birthday. I usually do anyone's chart that I meet, especially if there's wine involved. It's just a thing I've done for so long now. And that's the thing with it. Whether you want to take it or leave it as far as astrology goes, I will say, in my experience of reading charts and all of these things, I have never read someone's chart and not had them have an epiphany. I mean, I've never seen someone go, no, that's not right. That doesn't sound like me. So I guess for me, it's that consistent, continuous confirmation that it feels very accurate. And on top of that too, so once you get to know who you are as a person, I also consider what the placements are in this exact moment. So hence why we have horoscopes, because your birth chart is who you are and who you should attract and things like that. And then, but it's also important, like, is Mercury in retrograde? Where's the moon and sun right now? So things like that, because, like, for instance, on the first of the year this year, there were 5 planets in Capricorn, which is super driven, successful, probably the most just workaholic placement. So I personally felt incredibly motivated and ready to go. But then there are times that you don't feel like doing a ton of work, or days where you can only give a few hours, if even. Like right now we're in Pisces season. That's a sleepier time. It's creative. It's a great, like, for you, oh my goodness, you should be painting every day. You might want to, naturally. Yep. And then that, like, black and white work, that kind of boring tech work, is going to feel pretty heavy for all of us, especially if you're watery or have a lot of Pisces placements. So things like that are really important. And also the moon phases as well. So I mean, there's a lot there's a lot of energy to consider, but that's what I'm here for, is to help people through that.
It's really a fascinating concept. I'm wondering if you could just give a couple more examples of the connection between elements and the approach to marketing.
First, the simplest way is I'll just break down the messaging. So say, oh, and another thing I do have to comment. So it's, you're basing your missing and dominant element on the 10 planets. So 10 placements that are really important. So if you think about that, some people that I've read their charts have like 3, 3, 2, and 2 as far as elements go. And those people might not need a coach. They might be very balanced. They might feel pretty fluent as a person anyways. I just read someone's chart and she seemed like she had her stuff together. And I was like, that's you lucky lady. Then some of us have like 4, 4, 1, and 1. So you might have 2 dominants and 2 missing. So first of all, there is that, but a lot of people I have found have a pretty obvious dominant and a missing. So once you figure that out, the missing element that you want to message to, it really goes back to basic marketing where there's emotional selling, there's logical selling, there's inspirational selling, and there's educational. So you break it down into the elements. If you want to attract water people, they don't even care about the logistics and the numbers. They need to feel connected to you. They need to feel understood, empathized with. And if you share a lot about your personal story, that'll really attract them because they're emotionally connected to people. Then if you're dealing with earth, you have to be very logical and tons of facts, tons of numbers, tangible results. They want testimonials, social proof. I always think of my dad because he has a Virgo sun, Capricorn rising, super successful man, very serious. And yeah, you cannot sell him with emotions, not even a little bit. He needs to hear that you helped this many people and this amount, the exact tangibles. And then there's air, where they're fascinated by knowledge. If you can tell an airy person that, something they've never heard before, they're going to love you. So if you can educate them and give them a cool fact, they will love that. And then there is fire. Now they love to be inspired. They want you to be, that leader, that inspiration that they need. So that's going to attract fiery people, is just anything with passion and inspiration. And that's the messaging to your missing element. Now, when it's you, it's your dominant element where you want to show up. I actually have different funnels that each person uses. So for instance, whatever you're selling, you kind of always want to have a free something, a lower ticket signature offer, high ticket. But if you think about it, freebies can be in so many different forms. So for instance, a watery person, it should be something written or downloadable, something that people can, that they can create. And then a fire person would be something where, like, a challenge. So like, those 3-day challenge or 5-day challenges, a fiery person would have the energy to lead that and they would love the attention. And an earthy person, same thing, would probably prefer like a guide or a checklist. So, and this is you creating it. So if you're an earthy person, and then an air person would probably like to do a master class because they're really great teachers because they just know all of the things. So just things like that. And then you build your funnel from there versus telling someone, I've noticed the one-to-many model is very popular right now where everyone's like, you need group coaching. You need to do lots of people to, scale your business. But that just doesn't work for everyone. I was coaching a really watery person and she did a group program and she hated it because one-on-one feels more natural. She needs to connect to her people to be able to serve them. She can't have 8 people on a Zoom meeting. That's just not her energy. So being mindful of your offers, your funnel, and everything that's going to light you up. And also even different elements like working, and some don't. So I keep using water as an example. I love water. I'm lacking water, so I know a lot about them, but they might only want to work like 25 hours a week. So if you need to price a certain point or have certain offers that you really focus on, that's important as well.
Does this also help determine where you find your likely ideal clients?
So honestly, the interesting thing about this is I think, everyone kind of looks on all of the platform, everyone's kind of toe dipping their toe in everything. So you could probably find your ideal clients anywhere, but it's all about the messaging and how you show up, if that makes sense. So, for instance, if you're a fire, well, I keep using the same example. If you are an earthy person who wants to attract air people, you're definitely going to find, there, since it's only four elements, they'll be everywhere, but it's really about your messaging more than anything. So I always say like earthy people should be on Pinterest and LinkedIn. So Pinterest is going to be really organized and efficient, and LinkedIn is going to be more professional. And as you know, I'm sure you've seen, it's very like, these are my accomplishments, these are my published articles. So it's more tangible, but they can still attract airy people that happen to be on there. It's just about using the right messaging. So educating them, teaching them new things. So yeah, I would say as far, because it's only four elements, they're really everywhere as far as where to find them, but it's how you're messaging.
Can you talk about how you use astrology in your own life and business?
Yes, absolutely. Well, I do use all of this now. And that's when my business completely changed. So what was happening with me, when you have when you have your chart, you can have lots of good placements. So the way astrology works is it's yin and yang. There's always bad and good, but there are some placements that are more problematic than others. I try not to be too negative. And there's also you could have squares in your chart. You can have trines, which are amazing, and squares aren't so good. So, for instance, I have tons of squares in my chart. So it can be very hard because I almost have different personalities sometimes because of certain really important placements that don't mesh well. So what happens is like I'll start going down a certain path because of this part of me, and then I go, but that's not really going to light me up. So if that makes sense, that's what was happening with me. And then I finally was like, I need to revisit this chart and look into my business with it. And on top of that, I'm finally actually launching something. So I'm doing my lunar launch. So that is something I'm working on, where different phases of the moon are better times to do different things. So the new moon is the best time to batch your content. Um, that's actually coming up, which kind of works out because it's right for the year, for the beginning of the year, it's around the first of the month. But that is the best time to create your content. And then the full moon is the best time to sell and kind of do like your big end of your launch, because you want to be closing the cart right after the full moon, because that's the time to reflect and rest. So whether you had a great launch, a bad launch, that's, you just need to take time off to reset. So I'm actually going to finally be doing this in my business. I'm really excited about it. And so that's how I use it there. And then I actually got to choose my daughter's birthday to a certain extent, obviously. So she could have either been an Aries or a Taurus. And I was like, nope, we got to wait for Taurus because I'm married to an Aries and I can't have two of them in my house. So yeah. Of course, I couldn't choose the other placements, but I got very lucky. So.
So, could you talk a little bit about how you work with your clients using astrology to help them to market their business?
Yes, absolutely. So the birth chart is very important. So that has to be determined, because even my coaching style is different for different people to a certain extent, because for instance, a fiery person is going to need a lot of attention. However, that's not necessarily my dream element, but just for instance, my missing elements are water and air. So, and the reason for that is so I'm fiery and earthy. So earth is very good at organization, systems, funnels, things like that. So I can definitely help air people with that. And then fiery people tend to be pretty confident and like showing up on social media, being all over the place. So helping, water people with that feels really, really aligned, versus if I worked with a fiery person, they wouldn't need help with that. You know what I mean? So that's where the importance kind of lies. I've noticed my biggest breakthroughs are with my missing elements. And that's really where that all formed. But anyway, so um, understanding your birth chart is incredibly important to find your missing and dominant elements. And then my next favorite step is, and everyone should do this, whether you work with me or not, is called an astrology resume. And this is where you go through. So especially if you're feeling, crappy about yourself, and this is really my form of mindset work, where you go through your chart and you just highlight everything. You just copy and paste onto a Google document or Word document, whatever you prefer. And it's all of the positive traits that you have in your chart. And what this does for you is when you're having a bad day or just feeling like, I suck at everything, I can't do anything, I'm just not meant to do this, you can look at this list of things that are written in the stars that have been studied for longer than any known religion and say, okay, this is true about me. So I love using that tool because it's almost like, when your mom or your friend says something nice about you, you're like, okay, that's a little biased, but thanks. But this is a completely unbiased formula that just is what it is. So I love that, because when I'm feeling bad about myself, I'll say, oh, well, wait, I am really organized and I'm really this. And, so it just kind of makes you feel better. Now, on the other side of that, there's also shadow work. And that is when you find, I hate saying bad traits, but your problematic traits and placements. And you also will write this down. And then you find out what kind of work you need to do for that. So is meditation going to be your best thing? Tapping, journaling, resentment work. So things like that. So that, depending on what it is and what's going to be your biggest, the thing that's holding you back the most. So that's my version of mindset work. Yeah. And then if people are launching something, a product, then going through the Lunar Launch. And I'm actually opening a mastermind that will have all of these things. So it's a 3-month program, group program, but it also is going to have I'm actually creating a course all about this. So it'll have, astrology and marketing and business. So all of the things, and group coaching. And those people are really going to be focused on launching something and really going through the whole process.
Today on the Shaman's Notebook, I have been speaking with Laura Kasl, who is an astrology business strategist. If people want to find out more about your work and offerings, where can they go?
They can go to laurakasl.com. So it's KASL, and Laura_Kasl on Instagram.
Great. Well, thank you so much for being a guest today on the Shaman's Notebook.
Thank you so much, Suzanne. It's been a pleasure.
Each week on the Shaman's Notebook, I bring you new perspectives on healing from energy medicine practitioners, shamans, intuitives, and astrologists who are changing the way we think, feel, and heal. If you enjoyed the show, please subscribe to the Shaman's Notebook. And if you want to experience energy healing for yourself, join me on Fridays at the Healing Salon. Thanks so much for listening. I'm Suzanne LeGrand, and you've been listening to the Shaman's Notebook. For more insights and adventures into healing, subscribe below and visit me at SuzanneLegrand.com.